How's it going, everyone? And welcome to episode 2 of the All You Can Board podcast. My name is Dylan.
And I'm Carlo.
And today's episode, our main course is going to be Your Favorite Games Are Flawed, which probably as part of that sounds a little self-explanatory, but if you want more details of exactly what we're going to get into and talk about, stick around because we're going to get into it very shortly. But first, before we do, just for anyone out there either discovering us for the first time or new to All You Can Board in general, this is a podcast based on a YouTube channel that started in 2020. We've been active there for, I guess, over 6 years now, which seems crazy. And now we've started a podcast. We've had a lot of topics over the years that we thought this would be great, but we don't know exactly how to do this in video form because we don't have a lot of visuals for this, or we don't have a lot of B-roll for this. And now this podcast creates opportunities for us to have those discussions without having to worry about the visuals for it. So we're really excited that this podcast exists now. And if you have missed it, this is obviously episode 2. So we have an episode 1 and episode 0, and we should be available on all major podcast platforms. But if you find one that we are not available on, please let us know and we will get ourselves added because, again, this is new to us and I think we've covered them all, but you never know where people are listening. So before we jump into our appetizers, which is the first thing we always start with on these episodes, I'm going to throw it to Carlo, who has a quick little addendum from episode 1.
Yeah, so thank you. This is just a very quick thing. I just wanted to note this comes from a comment that was made from one of our very valuable Discord members. Their username is Murwork, M-R-W-R-K. I'm just going to assume it's pronounced Murwork. And it was regarding my board game law from last episode where I said something along the lines of the industry should have fewer designers and more developers. I'm just going to quickly read out their comment because it was a very valid one. So they said, 2 points for consideration. I would suggest fewer games rather than fewer designers, as I don't want the industry to automatically turn away new ideas from new designers. It also touches ever so slightly on gatekeeping. Fewer overall games, and hone those games, yes, I can get behind that, but stay open to new voices. So that's a very valid point, and I want to thank this user for bringing it up, especially in the way that they did. I can tell that they didn't think I was trying to be a gatekeeper. We obviously touched on that in the last episode as one of our sort of collective laws that we don't accept gatekeeping. That's really something that we want to stand by in terms of our community and the way we run our podcast and our channel. So my general point still stands about the fact that I think my emphasis should have just been on that the developers are very underappreciated and that role in general is underrepresented in terms of how the work on games is credited. And ideally, if there was more appreciation shown for that, I think it would naturally lead to more people pursuing the game development side rather than designing, which would naturally just lead to there being fewer designers and fewer games, but more polished games. But yeah, it is absolutely valid to call me out on the fact that the wording maybe wasn't the best. I didn't want it to sound as though I was telling any specific person or people out there that, like, you shouldn't be designing games, you should instead be developing. The last thing I want is a designer or an aspiring designer to hear that and think like, well, who is this guy to tell me that I should be developing instead? Like, if that's where your heart is, then follow your heart and don't let me tell you otherwise. So thank you again, Murwork, for the comment on that.
All right, so we are going to jump into our appetizer. If you want a little clarification of what the appetizer is, this is basically each host from that episode, whether it's just myself and Carlo or myself, Carlo, and Braden when he's on one of these episodes, can bring any topic that we want to do with board games. It has to be something we can talk about in, 3 to 5 minutes, essentially, because it's supposed to be just the appetizer before we get into the main course. But it can be anything you want board game related. And so, Carlo, why don't you tell everyone what your appetizer is today?
All right, Dylan, here's the thing. I know last week I talked about Fresh Fish. It was more of a maybe traditional game report style thing, but the thing that's really been on my mind the past few days has been the Danes. Okay, so this is the new upcoming game that's been talked about, rumored for many, many years as sort of a follow-up to A Feast for Odin. I was sort of awake in the middle of the night after getting one of my children back to sleep. It was about 4 a.m. and I was unable to fall back asleep. I started going onto the Board Game Geek app on my phone, and that was it for sleep for that night. Once I started reading about the Danes, I kind of went down this rabbit hole, and I have to get some of these things out off my chest right now because, I know, I'll say it right now, a lot of this is probably going to come across as negative. I'm probably pretty worked up because it's still pretty close and recent, but I think one place that people might want to start if you're wondering what exactly is the Danes, okay? Because this was initially announced as like an expansion to A Feast for Odin many, many, many years ago. And since then, it has evolved into all kinds of things. Is it a standalone game? Can it be combined? Whatever. And the designer, by the name of Gernot Kopke, pardon me if I mispronounced that, but he is the other credited designer with Uwe Rosenberg on the Norwegians expansion. So that's what he's best known for, is co-designing that. I don't think he has a published game design on his own yet. So if you go to a thread on the page for the Danes, there's a thread called "What exactly is the Danes?" And there's people weighing in saying like, well, I kind of think of it's kind of like what Caverna is to Agricola. Someone else is like, I think it's kind of more like what Jaws the Lion is to Gloomhaven. Someone else is, well, it's more like Dune Imperium Uprising to Dune Imperium. Ticket to Ride Rails and Sails to Ticket to Ride. Terra Mystica Age of Innovation. Glenmore 2 to Glenmore. Like, there's all these different comparisons people are drawing. This is long back and forth in this thread, okay? And then I just want to quote this user, Andreas CM, who came up with, I think, the most spot-on comment in the thread, which said, I suggest we all come back to planet Earth now. This new lofty term, game-elution, is not needed. Terms like modularity or backwards compatibility are sufficient to describe those aspects in the Danes. Anything beyond that just sounds too confusing, conceptual, and esoteric. Not helpful if a new term requires long paragraphs of explanation, which then still don't result in a clear and concise understanding. And then after that, like a couple comments down, the designer, Gernot Kopke, went on with a few more paragraphs trying to like expand on the game-elution concept and clarify again. And it's like, people still don't really even understand entirely what this is. So this is a game that's going to be going to crowdfunding at some point in this first quarter of 2026. I think it was initially scheduled for January, but it has been pushed back slightly. We'll see if it ends up meeting this quarter one target. But just a quick like sort of backtrack here about the history, okay? The first thread I could find from this designer announcing this was from October 2018, okay? So we're talking over 7 years ago this was announced. So like how long before that was he potentially thinking about it, planning it? I have no idea. A Feast for Odin came out in 2016, I believe. So then there was a comment from April 2019 in another thread I found saying that it was planned for Essen 2020, okay? It is, I'm going to remind you, it's February 2026 right now. In that same April 2019 comment or thread, he kind of touched on this other, like, the Swedish expansion that he also was planning, which, like, I'm going to come back to that later, okay? So now I'm just going to talk about some of the, so he basically says that his game-elution idea that he initially presented to Fjordlandspiel, the publisher, was not entirely accepted. It was, again, it has evolved into all kinds of things. Right now, where it stands, it is slated to be its own standalone game, where he basically said that the publisher will not be including any rules or guidelines or explanations in there for how to combine with elements of A Feast for Odin or Norwegians, because it would be too many rules and be too confusing for players. But he says you can mix and match stuff, and you can house rule this, you can house rule that. Maybe you can try this, maybe you can try that. He says most of it hasn't been play tested, but he thinks it would work. And a lot of these elements, like it sounds like the game is going to be at least, I would guess, just from what I've read and my speculation, the DNA of it is probably going to feel at least 50 to 70%, maybe even 80% similar to A Feast for Odin in terms of how the game plays. Okay, but a lot of the actual contents in terms of the components that are being included and stuff are being referred to as though they're like additions to A Feast for Odin. So I'm going to there's a giant list that he put. I'm just highlighted a few that I want to point out, okay? The first is that instead of having the D8 and the D6, so for those who aren't familiar, that's just like the sides of the dice, he's going to have a new D7 and D14, which he says he invented these in 1989, and he wanted to introduce these for a different game he was designing, and the reason why these are going to be implemented in this game is to lower the player's odds slightly for those like hunting and whaling activities on those action spaces, okay? So here's some of the other things that are going to be in this. More than 200 new occupation cards, 26 new kopangs. Pardon me if I'm mispronouncing this. These are basically the new version of what were islands in the other one, okay? So there's going to be 13 tuck boxes and each tuck box is going to have a double-sided Kopang, and in those they're also going to have sets of these like buildings that go with the island. So there's apparently 38 buildings and 38 new action space markers as well. A double-sided new home board where you can play an optional 6-round game or 8-round game instead of the 7-round game. The 8-round game is going to have this new tax element that attaches onto your feeding board, where your harvest board or whatever, where you have to cover up additional like coins and
Oh
stuff.
my god! Did they introduce that so you can't eat silver? You have to like you pay your taxes instead.
You know what? I wish it was. I wish it was to address my thematic complaint about sitting down to eat silver, which you justify as leaving the table to go to the market. Suddenly, I really wish, Dylan.
You're never going to convince me that they're not introducing this because they heard our constant debates. They're like, we need to settle this.
Well, our debates happened since we started the YouTube channel. Keep in mind, this idea goes back to 2018. So
yeah, but this is why it's taken so long. This is why they were like, man, we got to incorporate this now.
Okay, 2 new ship types, a new weapon type, axes, different start player weapons that decide the first round's turn order, and also a start hunting joker for the D7, so that instead of having to throw the dice, you pay 3 weapons of the same kind. Dozens of new gray tiles. There's ways to transport tiles now to other places. I'm going to leave it at that, okay? The other things I just want to touch on real quick is just like the scope of his kind of like ambition and the amount of projects. He mentions in other threads that he was like working on a Glass Road expansion, which he says Uwe ended up scrapping and instead published as Black Forest, which is actually a co-designed game with Tito Lorenz. This same designer, Gernot Kopke, also mentions he's working on an expansion for Fields of Arle that goes up to 4 players. Then I found a comment from March 2021, so almost 5 years ago, saying he's been working on replayable legacy games for 2 of Uwe's games, and saying that the first prototype was made back in 2019. Still haven't heard anything about these legacy games that are going on, okay? Then, remember how I mentioned the Swedish expansion thing? So there's a thread from November 2025 called referring to the Swedes, and he talks about it being like this other aspect of the game where you're on a journey with this team of Vikings, and there's a leader meeple, and you go on small missions on this map. There's going to be a campaign mode in this one. I guess this was one of the legacy things he was planning, where there's like rules changing step by step. There's now going to be a 3-space triangular tile, as well as an H-shaped goat tile, which I won't even get into that. New resource peat, as well as a requirement to heat your homes in the winter rounds. And, I quote, direct quote, a possible meeple status of being ill and possibly dying. Okay, so we still haven't even seen the Danes, and there's plans for the Swedes. I don't know when this will come out, if ever. And then, I'm just going to stop here with this last thing, okay, is he has also referred to another expansion he's thinking about for the same game, or standalone, I have no idea, called the Normans. And that's basically where I was like, that's it, I'm out. I'm done reading about this game for now. I kind of have to stop myself there. Yeah, go ahead.
What about this upsets you? Just like, I think I understand, but just like if you had to hone it into what is it that makes you upset about all this?
I think it's that, like, I've seen and this isn't to take shots at anyone in particular, people can get excited about what they want. It's just when things like this get announced and it's like basing off of like the success of a previous game or an IP, whether it's, games like Star Wars, Dune, Lord of the Rings, whatever that comes out these days, it feels like it's getting people excited based on how much they love A Feast for Odin. A lot of people have Feast for Odin as like, whether it's their number 1 game or one of their greatest games of all time. I know you love it. It's a game I enjoy quite a bit. Like, it's been in my top 50 games every time we've done our countdown in the past years. Never as high as you, but I think it's a solid game. But I think that people, I see like, shut up and take my money comments, or like, oh my god, this is going to be so good. This is going to be even better than A Feast for Odin. And I'm starting to see that it's going to be coming in a Gloomhaven-sized box, which is enormous. And
it's the fact ridiculous. That it's that's too much.
I know, and the fact that it's not even, again, they're not even including rules to make it compatible with, but are saying like, yeah, sure, there's going to be variants online. You can read threads from other users suggesting how to mishmash different islands from different games, or use these occupations from this one, but not this one. And it's like, so how much is this game in this Gloomhaven-sized box going to be? I imagine probably minimum $200 Canadian, if I'm speculating, minimum. A Feast for Odin on its own, everywhere I look now, is between 100 and 130. The Norwegian's expansion is 45 to 60. So, like, if you are someone who already has those games or wants to get in this whole system, that's probably like $400 minimum, and like maybe a quarter of your shelf space for like, unless you stop playing all other games and just your life is now playing the Danes. Like, I guess I'm at the point where I just want people to take a moment before this campaign goes live or when it goes live, and don't think you have to be day one backer automatically. I'm not telling you to back or not to back, but just like think about what this game means. Think about what your experience with A Feast for Odin has been. Do you want this as a compliment? Do you want this instead of A Feast for Odin? And also remember that this game will almost certainly go to retail. So this isn't like you have to capitalize on this 30-day window, and if you don't, then this is your last chance and you're going to miss the greatest thing since sliced bread. And yeah, that's kind of where I stand with it.
Yeah, I think, to me, it's been 10 years since Feast for Odin came out, or this is the 10-year mark, and I feel like them wanting to do a new version that is like balancing this or changing the probability here, adding in this new size tile here, adding in this new mechanic. If that's all been taking this long to research, I know that you said it was as far back as like 2018. If the reason it's taken so long is because with the complexities of that game, it's needed this amount of time to do it right and rebalance and make it a better version of A Feast for Odin, whatever. And then like take all the time you need. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is this part doesn't bother me. If there's a level of ambition or excitement that made them talk about it or announce it early, that happens. And sometimes like Slay the Spire, the board game got talked about a lot earlier than it actually started to go up. I remember I featured it in like most anticipated games, and then it didn't like actually go to crowdfunding for a while after. So that is less egregious to me. But like things, whereas now like it's coming to crowdfunding this year, and then you're mentioning how like, yeah, there won't be an official way to combine it with a Feast for Odin, but there's all these other things you can do. Like at some point, if you want us to feel confident in this game, you need to confidently just say, this is a standalone game. This isn't meant to be combined. You know, like why would anyone need to combine it? You already released A Feast for Odin and the Norwegians. If you're working on another expansion for it, then there's going to be more too. I don't need a game the size of Gloomhaven or a box the size of Gloomhaven with that many components to be able to be combined with more. That's already gigantic. Why would I need to combine that with another game? Like, and if the worry is we're going to upset people, I think you just need to say this game is not for you. Like Feast for Odin is still great, but this is if you're wanting a rebalanced, reimagined, like fixing this, adding more cards, doing this. If for someone that is interested in that, here's a great way to do that. But I just don't know why there's this. How you can be months out from launching crowdfunding and saying there will be this way to combine it. That to me, that's just trying to like please everybody. And I think you can just let yourself not please the people because I feel like that would be the minority. Like, I don't know, like me as someone who loves A Feast for Odin and has it, I'm not going to be upset. Even if I really want to buy the Danes day one, I'm not going to be upset that I can't combine it with A Feast for Odin. I'm going to take out a Gloomhaven sized box and Feast for Odin and the Norwegians. I'm going to figure out how to combine them all to what end? Like, why?
Yeah, well, and we see this happening with Dune Imperium and Dune Imperium Uprising, and people were unclear. Is it a standalone? Is it an expansion? Can it be combined? What's the ideal way to combine? What should I mix and match? And it just feels like he even said in a thread, you can't please everyone. I know the people are going to be disappointed, but like you said, it feels like they're still trying to please everyone. And he has said it's his favorite game of all time. So like, I understand being passionate about something and wanting to pour your time into something. But yeah, it's just the way that it's coming together makes me a bit skeptical. And I worry that people are just going to throw their money at it without thinking about really like, do I need this, or can I wait a couple years and learn more about the game, see reviews before I decide whether to buy or not?
I feel like the fact that it's coming to crowdfunding, when it goes up, 100%, I would expect there should be a rule book there to download and to look at. If not, I think that's a big miss. But I feel like this is one where when it goes up, look through all the photos, read everything that they've given a description on to better understand what it is, read the rule book. If after all that you're still confused, that's a bad sign to me. But if after all that gives you clarity, then really they just should have not talked about it to this extent until it was going to crowdfunding, because it feels like now you're building excitement, building expectation, confusing people here, having to clarify this, where it could have just been like all that info will be in the campaign coming Q1 2026. Like just leave it at that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Credit to him. He's very transparent. He's very active on the forums. So if you want to learn more about the game, there's like hundreds of threads to read up about these games. So
yeah, sounds like our episode 3 is just going to be about the Danes and this type of thing in board games, right?
I'm going to need a break before I can talk about the Danes again. I've gotten worked up sufficiently enough. So I know this felt like more than an appetizer. So why don't you tell me what you've got for us, Dylan?
Sure. Okay, I just got to say, what I want to talk about is optimization in games. So this is a bit coming off of our last episode with board game laws and stuff, but also from my experience in the past couple weeks. So I've been playing 3 games a bunch on BGA, and I don't think I've been playing. Well, maybe one of them you did, but so I've always have games of Castle of Burgundy going. It's already my most played game this year. So I've been playing a lot of 2-player Castle of Burgundy on like the arena mode on Board Game Arena, but I have been playing a ton of Toy Battle and Zenith on Board Game Arena, in their arena mode for both of them as well. And what I want to say, which is a really bold statement, it's going to upset some people, but like I'm doing that on purpose. There's more behind this. Is I think optimization is the death of discovery and exploration in board games. And what I mean by that is that I am horrible at all these games on arena mode, and that's because I cannot convince my brain to play them in the way it would need to win. Because to win means that in, say, Castle of Burgundy, for example, there's certain tiles that if they come up in the middle, if you don't go for them, you are putting yourself at a detriment. There's one where it's like you get a certain amount of points for the different color of tiles that you've sold. If like I noticed pretty early playing Arena that if that comes up, it is immediately scooped up by everyone. And then sure enough, when I looked into it, it's like, yeah, it's one of the strongest tiles. And so it immediately gives you this direction where if you don't take it, you're not playing well. And I hate that because as someone who, the way I like to enjoy games is to be like, what am I going to discover this time? What if I grab this tile? What if I do this? As soon as you're optimizing, you're diluting a game down to what is going to make me win. And that is just never the most fun way for me to play a game. And so the reason I bring up these 3 games specifically is I feel like Castle of Burgundy, I realize I really love that game and I hate playing it competitively. And yet I still do. Toy Battle is the least egregious. That one is so short, and even though at times playing it optimally can be frustrating, it doesn't bother me as much because it feels like more like it was designed to have that depth and to be kind of mean and fighty in the way that you're I have problems with that game. I'm not going to get into them all here, but I still love it, and I feel like that one works the best. The one that has been pissing me off the most is Zenith. And it's so weird because I am really, really enjoying Zenith. And yet playing it competitively is so frustrating because there's always, and this is probably me having to learn more about the game and stuff too, but it's having to recognize like I need to do this even though I want to do this. And as soon as I have to make a decision like that, I start to ask myself like, how many of these board games truly have been designed for this level of competitive play? Some board games have, like you talk about Carcassonne, you talk about Agricola, and from everything I've heard, even as someone not into those games, there is a competitive scene that is sort of getting together around the fact that there's all this depth here and there's different ways that it can be played competitively and feel really fulfilling. But then a lot of other games, it feels like people just play them competitively they figure it out, here's the optimal way to do it. And you can see that as soon as the game starts being played that way, it's not as good, or it's like it struggles. And then they'll complain and say, well, but it's not as balanced, or yeah, it really isn't good here. And my argument would be, I don't think every board game, when we have thousands of board games released every year, is like designed that deep to be played professionally and competitively. And I don't think that's a flaw in the game. I think it's a flaw in that our expectations are that I can sit down and figure a game out, and then if I don't like what I figured out, it's the game's fault or it's the designer's fault. I don't think games are meant to be figured out that way, many of them. And like I'm wrong on some for sure, but on others, I feel like there's certain games that on BGA I just feel like shouldn't have an arena mode. And I'm not saying that about these 3 games. I'm just saying that like Castle of Burgundy, to me, it's not that it can't be played that way. Like there's a level of balance and depth to it that I really appreciate. But to me, it's such a less fun game when I'm playing it like that. Like that's why I'm almost like now enjoying playing 3 players and 4 players more, because I feel like there's less room for that. And there's more to like explore, more interesting decisions. And I don't feel like this is something that has like an overall solution, right? Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to play a board game competitively. There's nothing wrong with wanting to like figure it out and be like, how do I win? How can I like beat my opponent next time and guarantee that? But if you find out that a game has a tile that's like, well, I take this tile and I'll always get ahead. It's like, but does that feel good? And like, how do you change your brain that when you see it, you don't say, well, I need to take this so I can win. You know, like I've stopped doing that. I've stopped just grabbing that tile, and every single time, doesn't matter if I don't take it, very next turn they take it. And it's a sign to me that like, yeah, maybe that's a flaw with this tile in the game, but also why are we trying to figure out the most powerful thing just so we can take it every single time and make sure we win? You know what I mean? So like, this is less like, I don't have a full on point here. I feel like out of these 3 games, Toy Battle gets the closest to that balance. But to me, what I'm saying, I guess, is trying to win isn't fun, but winning by playing is fun. You know what I mean? Like winning by playing the game and discovery and then having it work out and win, or it doesn't. You're like, oh, but if I could have done this a little bit differently, I think it would have, versus me saying, okay, this is the optimal tile. If I pick this, I'm going to win next time. You know what I mean? So like, it's more like a conversation I want to throw out there, and I feel like it's a bigger topic, but it's just been on my mind.
Wow, okay, so I'll try to make this somewhat brief because I know I went on pretty long about the Danes there. I haven't played Zenith yet, of course, so I won't even comment on that. The Castles of Burgundy is one where I think I accidentally ended up in a tournament for it a while ago that I accepted without realizing. Like maybe I thought it was from our Discord and ended up being like a competitive tournament, and I got into some of these games. And for a little while I actually tried the arena mode a couple times, and I will say that is one that I kind of lost interest in playing that way as well as you. And I'm trying to figure out like if it's because of the fact that so much of the game is played on your own board, and obviously there's the competition to draft the tiles, but because as people draft them, there's not a whole lot else you can do to get in people's way. Like it does sometimes end up feeling a bit prescribed in the sense of like you look at what's out there and you go, okay, everyone's going to want this tile, then after that there's this many, or there's 2 of these castle tiles, or there's 2 mines, so if I don't take one now, I'm definitely not going to get one. And the more I played, I started to see the value of certain tiles, and it started to feel a little bit more samey than I would like, and a little more than I expected from a game that is so well received and has been so well loved by a lot of people for a long time. So Castles of Burgundy kind of alternates between like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 for me, because I feel like I've reached my ceiling of enjoyment I'm ever going to get out of the game. And so I agree with you on everything you said about it there. Toy Battle, I think is an excellent 2-player game. I haven't played the arena mode, but I have had quite a few games going on with Shaden from our Discord. And obviously I've played a couple times in person with you. And in that one, I think the fact that there's all the different maps, and the fact that you remove certain tiles without knowing from each player's side before the game starts, and the fact that you can have up to 8 on your rack, but no one rarely like has that many other than at the start of the game, leaves enough unknowns that it doesn't feel like there's ever really this is the guaranteed best move, unless it's like the opportunity to like use your 3-piece to remove someone's like 7 off of your 6, and this is going to sound pretty nebulous to people who don't know the game, but I'm not going to go into details of the rules. Yeah. So I think it's just from game to game, it really depends. And I'm the type of person who likes to deep dive into games and play to see if they ever, like, I'm always looking for that next Agricola, Carcassonne, Race for the Galaxy game that I think can be played hundreds of times and still not feel solvable or have it prescribed moves. And more these days, I find I reach this ceiling with games where I go, that was cool, I enjoyed it, but like I think I'm done with exploring it, and like if someone wants to play it, I'm good to play it, but I don't need to kind of like seek it out. And I just think in general, the game design industry is going further and further away from those like infinite replayable games and going more for that strong first impression. But as a result, there's kind of a cap on, once you optimize it, like you said, it's just kind of loses a bit of that appeal.
I almost wish that there was a way that people could, like when they're releasing these games, essentially have there be like like sometimes on the back of a box it said like, here's the complexity rate and here's this rating or whatever. I wish there was a way to just say this is a game designed with competitive play in mind, and so it gives you a sense of like, oh, there's the depth of like something like Agricola where there's all these different ways you can go, different cards I can draw that'll shape my strategy. Or in Carcassonne, it's like, yes, you're placing tiles, but depending on how the board forms, you have to adapt to what that is and learn to respond and what this means. That's different than certain board games where it's like, it's not that they aren't competitive. It's just that as soon as you get to competitive play, they're not balanced for that. And I feel like I want to know that. I guess less that I want to know that, and I just want that to be more aware, because I feel like sometimes people try to make every game competitive to some level, and I don't think that there's some that I think they fall apart, and I don't think that's always the fault of the game. I think that some games just aren't meant to like be played 200 times and expect that you are like going to have fun if you're playing it 200 times competitively, because it's going to feel samey. It's going to feel boring at some point, in my opinion. right?
Yeah.
Some games.
Okay. I had one last thought I'm going to throw out there, and maybe we save the full debrief about this for another time, because I think this is its own topic. But do you think that some of that has to do with the degree of randomness not being right in some of these games? Because when I think of those 3 games I mentioned again that are among my most played games ever, I feel like the degree of the randomness and variability is like the sweet spot. Like Carcassonne, the random tile draws, the way the map is different every game, like there's no way to solve it. You know, Agricola with the occupation cards, and you never know which round the family growth action is going to come up in, and those kinds of things. You know, Race for the Galaxy has a giant deck of unique cards that are all shuffled up differently, all this kind of stuff. Whereas like games like chess that are entirely deterministic, those are the kinds of games that I find get stale as you kind of solve them, because it's like, you know what to expect every time. There's a kind of a formula that you can discover, similar to like when we talk about like net decking and like Hearthstone and those kinds of games, where it's like, this is good, why would I not do this?
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think I'm going to tease because I forgot to do it at the start, I'm going to tease the fact that we have bonus episodes on Patreon now, because I think this might be a great expansion topic for our bonus episode next time, where we kind of dive into this specific a little bit more. But I think you're right. And I think that like the last little example I'll leave it with is that, for me, the idea of chess being played competitively becomes samey and is not interesting to be able to just figure out those moves ahead of time. But if chess had cards where all of a sudden it's like, this game, my knights can do this, and then you're still playing the same game, but people have to adapt to this ability on this card, or like in Agricola, right? Like the fact that I'm going to start with this resource, I'm going to start with this direction, to me is like that. It's more impressive to me too, that when people have to adapt to all these different possibilities versus just, I figured the game out, or I know this tile's the best, or I know this move is the best opener, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that is it for our appetizers. It was a nice meaty appetizer today, which is going to happen sometimes because that's just who we are. But we're going to jump into... Actually, you know what? Before we jump into the main course, because that was such a meaty appetizer, let's just take a little break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All You Can Board is proudly sponsored by Victory Pints, our local game store of choice here in Winnipeg, Canada. We strongly believe that Victory Pints is pretty much the gold standard of board game stores, and not just here in Winnipeg. Their main priority is having a wide selection of games, many of which you won't find anywhere else. They ship Canada-wide, $15 flat rate or free shipping for orders over $200, and they even take requests to try and order in specific games you're looking for. They also have a used games section where you can trade in games for in-store credit and maybe even find some hidden gems that others have traded in as well. Just note that the used games section is only available for in-person purchases and trades. Again, located in Winnipeg at the corner of Henderson and Hespeler, or you can check them out online at victorypints.ca. A massive thank you to Victory Pints for all their support over the years. All right, welcome back. Before we jump right into the main course, I'm just going to give a little explanation on what it means in case you're curious. So again, our topic today is your favorite games are flawed, and this actually comes from a video that I did numerous years ago now on our YouTube channel that was about I can't remember how I worded the actual title, but it was essentially like the things I don't like about my top 10 games. And so I went through all my top 10 games and I said like what I don't like about them, or something to that extent essentially. And so we wanted to take that idea, but throw a little curveball here. And so I've picked 3 games that are either games that I know we're on Carlo's top 50, or I think, since we haven't done our last top 50 since 2023, that I think will end up on his top 50. And Carlo has done the same for me. So we've picked games for the other person, but we are bringing what we think are the worst parts about those, worst part, or like the most egregious part, however you want to word it, about the biggest flaw, I guess is the best way to say it, the biggest flaw about those games. And then we're going to explain why and let the other person respond. And so it's us sort of like not attacking the other person's games, but bringing that more unbiased opinion at times, because they're not, well, I mean, I shouldn't say they're not also our favorite games. I don't know what each of us has picked, but it sort of like allows that person to sort of set the stage and the topic, and then the other person can sort of either agree if they're like, yeah, you make a good point, or can push back, and we can have a little discussion about them. So that's it. That's essentially how we're going to do this. We're going to alternate games. We're going to start with Carlo. He'll give his game first. Before that, we're going to do some quick little fun predictions on what we think the other 3 games are that the person is bringing in. I'm just going to say my predictions first, then I'm going to throw it to Carlo to say his, and then Carlo, you can just go from your predictions right into... And
we won't confirm or deny them yet, obviously. We don't want to spoil.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the games I am guessing that you are bringing of mine are Libertalia, A Feast for Odin, and Lost Cities. Those are the three guesses I'm giving.
Okay. And I'm going to guess that you're coming after Le Havre, Renature, and Race for the Galaxy.
All right. Well, why don't you take it away? What's the first game you brought in?
I will say, it took me a while to narrow these down. I had a short list of like 15, 20 games. I just kept cutting. But this was the first one that came to mind because I've often felt like the outlier of the three of us. I know Braden likes this quite a bit as well. So the first one I'm coming after, the last time we did our top 50 games of all time, this was your number 17, your highest ranked party game. Ahead of even Wavelength from our Hall of Fame, was So Clover. So I'm just going to start by saying that this is on Board Game Geek. It is ranked the number 6 party game. Okay, number 6 overall for party games. And what I think is kind of like the flaw of the game, or my biggest issue with it, is there's kind of 2 points that stem from the first. The main point is that I think the term party game is a bit misleading for this game. The reasons are, the first reason for that is that it's a 3 to 6 player game that I don't really personally want to play with 5 or 6 players. And the reason for that leads into the second part, which is that there's a bit too much like quiet thinking time for my liking for this style of game. So I feel like it has worked, that the times I've enjoyed playing it most has been with 4 players where it's been like 2 couples playing. And especially when, we got together with our respective partners and it was like one of the first times we'd all hung out as a group of 4. It was excellent for that type of setting. We got to know each other a bit better. There were a lot of laughs and that kind of thing. But I still didn't find there were, like, I don't have any specific memories of like specific clues or things like that have come up from playing So Clover. And a lot of the time it's, everyone else kind of waiting for that person to kind of like organize these cards. Basically it's a game where you have these cards that put on this kind of clover, you rotate them around, you try to give 1-word clues to associate 2 words, and then you mix up the cards and the rest of the people at the table have to try to guess with the order that you had the cards in, is the basic pitch. So the last thing I'll say before I let you jump in here is I can look past kind of like the variation of the interesting clues. Like sometimes they're too easy, sometimes they're a little pretty hard, whatever, that's fine. I don't really criticize it for that too much. But I just think there are too many better party games that actually play well at the higher counts and that give you more of conversation, more laugh out loud moments. Like the obvious ones that come to mind first are Wavelength and Monikers. But even Monstrosity, which doesn't come out as often because it's specifically like a drawing game, but that one I enjoy more than So Clover. And the one I compare most to it, other than Codenames, which I've never been as big on Codenames as most people, even Just One has a lot of that quiet time where you're sitting there thinking of the clues. But I just think I enjoy the game more overall because of the reveal and the post-reveal discussion afterwards, as well as the actual coming up with the clues. I enjoy that aspect of the game more. So even though I've enjoyed So Clover, it's been a consistent like 7 out of 10 for me. I just feel like I really only want to play it when it's with 4 players, and I'm usually going to prefer just too many other games as a result.
Gotcha. Okay, I will start by saying I would agree with you if we worded it as the biggest flaw in So Clover is that they didn't include a sand timer. Because I think that everyone should have a limit of time on how long they take to figure out their clues. And the reason I think that is that the biggest thing I've had to try to get across to people when I'm introducing So Clover is don't get hung up if you can't think of a really good clue. Because some words are going to be really hard to tie together with one word. And people will automatically think, I need to find a way to tie them together as well as possible. And the part I love about So Clover is even if you don't, there's the corners, and the corners is this clue is working not only for this word, but it's also working on one side for the other word. So it doesn't matter if one side maybe is harder to figure out. It would matter if both sides are really hard to figure out, which again, that can happen. But sometimes you have to let the clue be not strong, and then when you see people discussing at the table what you're trying to get them to figure out, or that they realize, okay, well, this has to go here because this one's obvious, then you realize, oh, I didn't even have to think about that because that one's obvious, that other word has a clue associated with it now, and so now it's not as big of a problem. So I feel like that aspect of it just I have sat there where I'm done someone else is done and we're just waiting on one person and they really can't think of a clue. And at that point, I have already failed because if I say to them now, oh, don't worry about it feels like I'm trying to rush them, where I needed to say from the start, like, don't worry if you cannot figure it out, that's part of the game. And so having a sand timer would sort of add that aspect where I don't have to say anything. I'm like, your sand timer's right now. You got to write something down, and they might have to write something down they don't like, but they'll get better if we play another round, which we normally do. So that I would respond to it that way. I will say that it is less of a party game than like just one and whatnot. But I have played it at 5 and 6, and when you get past the figuring out your clues part, when you're actually just trying to piece together everyone's board, that to me is better than just one. That moment in Clover, trying to piece it together, and the moment where you are infuriated because they had everything in the right spot, and then one or two people is like, oh, but hang on, what if he meant this? And all you want to do is scream and say, shut up, like you had it. Like that to me is the best part. And I also like that you can just like increase the difficulty if it gets too easy by adding more random cards into your shuffle deck or whatever. But I will agree on the, like, it's on the lower end of what a party game is for sure. But I think that the downtime could be fixed just by putting a sand timer in there.
Okay, the only counter I'll say here is, so if you give a sand timer though and the timer runs out, then what, like, I'm going to give you a really short timer. You have 5 seconds to associate, and when the timer is, you have to pick a word, okay? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to give a word that links ketchup and internet. Okay? Ketchup and internet. 5, 4, 3, 2,
well,
1.
but I wouldn't give them 5 seconds.
Well, but what I'm saying, the point I'm making is just that, like,
Yeah.
if you don't have anything, what do you write? Like,
so
that's where the sand timer fails. Like, what do you write then? Like, you just write red, and then it's like, well, how are they going to get us internet?
Well, that's the thing. In some cases, you do just write red because you realize that the other clue that you're leading to is going to get put there because of the other side of the clover being obvious. And so you actually don't have to lead them to that word. You really only have to lead them to one of the words. Like, that's the depth that I get into, where it's like, and I get that's not as fun than coming up with the perfect word that links two together. Like, that's always the most satisfying thing, is for someone to be like, that's a really good clue. But I feel like sometimes in Clover, you just get dealt bad cards and you have to kind of like just roll with it. And you don't put red, but if it's ketchup and internet, maybe you put like, I don't know, tangy or something like that. And people are like, yeah, the internet could be tangy. I guess, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, the internet was really tangy today. Like, kind of works.
Thank you for proving my point. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just that, like, I like the bit of the freedom of something like just one a little more.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, it's a good point either way. Like, it is like less of a party game than a lot of the other examples you gave. Like, certainly more than or less than Monikers and just one, I think. Just from the times I played it, it doesn't fit the party mold nearly as much as those games. Yeah. All right. My first one is going to upset you. It's going to upset other people. And so I need to clarify that this is my one pick, that I wanted to make one pick that is a game I also love and that I knew I'd get flack for, but I didn't want to just come at it from the perspective of, here's this thing I think makes the game worse. I wanted to come at it for, like, I'm just going to get into it because it's hard for me to explain. So I have picked Through the Desert. Yeah, I know Carlos' eyes just open double size here. And I have picked what I think is probably yours and mine, or at least it's one of my favorite like gameplay parts of the game, but I'm going to say it's also the biggest flaw for a specific reason. And that is where you can enclose point markers. Okay. And so the reason I'm picking this is because I think surrounding point tiles against the edge of the boards specifically and encapsulating them is the thing that prevents Through the Desert from being a bigger gateway game hit than it is. And the explanation I'm going to give for that is that I'm going to use an example first. So a game like Azul. Azul is a game that a lot of people who aren't board gamers play. And I will say that every single time I have taught Azul, everyone gets hung up on the exact same thing. And it is having to collect all your tiles on the side, either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and only then do you get to slide one tile over to the next row. That always trips people up, the sliding it over. Or like not only the sliding the tile over, but like, yeah, just everything about the mechanic. It makes sense once you've played Azul a bunch and it's become second nature. But to someone just playing, it's always the trip up in my experience. And I've not taught Through the Desert nearly as much as Azul, so I don't know for sure. But I will say that in the times I have, and also just in playing it, the part that sometimes feels like the most obtuse of all the rules in Through the Desert, which it doesn't have any other obtuse rules in my opinion, is the aspect of like this edge of the board enclosure. And I'm not talking about like if you circle things in the middle or against even the mountains that are in the middle of the board. There's something about games that use the edge of the board as like an ending or an enclosure thing that, like, it's not that I don't like it. I just find that it makes it a little bit more obtuse to say, like, okay, well, the edge of the board in a 3-player game is this, and in a 5-player game it also includes this, but you can go against the edge of the board here, so you're kind of trapping things on the edge there. I just feel like you're asking people to incorporate the end of a game board into it, and that's never my personal favorite thing. I feel like it just makes it a little bit more obtuse. And I just think similar to Root is a game that the more experienced you are, the harder it is to play with new players. And I think this is the one rule of Through the Desert that prevents it from being more of a gateway game, where if I played it a whole bunch and I play with someone new, this enclosure thing is a rule that for many people will be the rule that they say, okay, like I kind of get that, but I just won't focus on that much this game. Or, oh, like I think I see what it means, but I'm not going to like prioritize that strategically. And if you don't and someone else does, it can be such a swing that then it can give that potentially bad impression for someone. And for some people, it could make them be like, oh man, now I get that and I want to play again. And that's great. But I think that for some, it can be the thing that holds it up from being more of a simple gateway game. And you also can't just like remove that rule from Through the Desert because it is such a great rule. And this isn't a criticism of the game so much as it is, I think that like the way that game was designed, I don't know what the alternative is. I don't know what the better way to have this way to get multiple point tiles is. You could say, okay, well, you can enclose it by the edge of the board. You can only do it if you just fully from the caravan enclose something. But then that's a little bit less interesting. There's less tension now around that. It's harder to accomplish. So it's one of those things where I don't know that there's a good answer. I just think that if I'm looking at it, I think it's one of the rules, the holdups, that is preventing it from being more accessible to people. Because I wondered, and this came from the thing of me thinking one time, like, why doesn't Through the Desert come up nearly as much as I think it deserves? And maybe it doesn't. I'm just not hearing those conversations. I know a lot of people love it, but I don't hear it come up in the gateway conversations as often as some other games that I think are inferior gateway games. And I'm not saying this is the sole reason. I just think that this is one of those like Azul type rule trip ups that make it harder for a new player to fully grasp on one play.
Interesting. Okay, first off, I'm going to say, take some guts to come out Through the Desert. I did not see this coming. And I will also say, I think I've taught Through the Desert to probably 7 or 8 different people since learning it, and I've never personally seen it be an issue, or at least no one has ever voiced it being an issue or a hurdle.
Okay.
So I'm going to start by making a comparison as well to the ports in Catan, where basically in Catan, a lot of the central areas, like when you get to place your stuff at the start, you want to go in the middle a lot of the time, or I'm obviously going for where the dice rolls are going to be more prominent, but they kind of put these ports, like the fish expansion kind of boosts the outer edges of the board to kind of give you that trade-off of like, yes, a lot of the better rewards are in the middle, but if you start going for the outside and you kind of are left alone there, you might get rewards that other people are like, oh, we can't just let this player kind of, build on all these ports and have all these different options for trading. So right. I think this is in the game in order to provide those interesting trade-offs where, especially at the start where you place your 5 caravan leaders throughout the map, everyone obviously is looking at like, I got to get close to the oases, right? The trees. You want to get close to like the spots where there's like, you want to get between 2 3-point tokens or a 3 and a 2 that's also a couple spaces away from an oasis. But then as those spots start to fill up, you don't want to just get in these super congested areas. So if you can find a corner to kind of place one of your caravans, and then suddenly players look and go, yeah, there's not really a whole lot of tokens there. They're only going to be next to one oasis, not that many points. But we're like, but if no one goes there, they're just going to be able to section off that part of the map, close it off, get that amount of points. So I think it kind of like, it's the pressure of there's the safety near the edges, but then other players feel like they have to kind of come threaten you so that you don't feel entirely safe. And the last thing I'll say is that I often find because you end up, so if you're in the position to be able to close one of those off, but you need maybe 3, 4, 5 more camels to do it, but no one's close enough to do it, you start leaving that and you start prioritizing other things, suddenly the game timer, right? The game ends when any color of camels is depleted. I've had games where I have 2 or 3 of those that I'm working on, and then suddenly I realize I'm not even going to be able to get these all done because someone's going to end the game. So now you have to divert your focus from the things you're competing with others on to ensure that you actually spend the turns using the camels to close those off before the game ends. So it's almost like a project that you start that you forget about, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I have this deadline, and if I don't finish this, then all this work I put in is going to be kind of useless. So
Yeah, I agree. Like, I agree with everything you're saying, and this is the way I wanted to word it originally, and I kind of didn't. Is that like I approached this one specifically as, even if like I love this game, if I have to pick what is the worst thing about this game, it might not be a bad thing, but if you have to pick the worst thing about something that's great, if you're still ranking everything, there has to be something at the bottom, right? And so out of all the things through the desert, it's not that I think that's the worst. I think that if I look at it from the lens of a new person that has to consider things like that, even on their first caravan colors they're putting down, and like try to understand that it's maybe a barrier is the best way that could prevent you from fully enjoying through the desert, unless you're willing to be like, I want to get into this more and play this more. I just worry that maybe that's the thing that people don't fully grasp the first time, and so they miss a bit of that like magic sauce that is in through the desert. And I don't even have a better solution, because I'm not saying there is one. It's more just like, if I had to pick something, I think that might be what I think is like the worst thing. But even again, I love it. It's just,
yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I think the worst thing about it, and it's not something that ruins it either, is just the comparing the longest chain of camels of each color at the end, because in the end turns it kind of gets mathy, where you're like, okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I have 9. This person has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, they also have 9. So if I place 1, I go to 10. Then on their turn, they might be counting. Like, that's the one hold up for me about the game. But
yeah. But yeah, that's fine. I just wanted, I wanted to have one that was a little bit more challenging for me, and a stock. That was mine.
That's fair. Trust me, I got a challenging one coming at the end that I really wrestled with for a bit. But okay, let's move on to my second one here. So the second one I'm coming after is one that you guessed correctly. Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest.
Nice.
So this is a re-implementation of the original Libertalia. This was previously your number 5 game of all time. And so my main issue, and I think I've mentioned this before. Well, I've had a couple issues. I won't get into the other one though. My main issue is the loot tiles. And so I just find the aspect of the loot tiles. Oh, and quick pitch about this game: you kind of go on these different voyages. Everyone has these sets of character cards, and you're playing them, and they kind of resolve in one order and then resolve in reverse order, and they allow you to take these loot tiles, so everyone gets a piece of loot from this kind of like day of their journey. And so the loot tiles can be either good or bad, and they have very different ways that they can stack or score or whatever. So that's the kind of basic recap. I just find that part is not as interesting as the rest of the game, which is picking the characters, the hand management of, do I use this character early? Do I wait for everyone else to use these characters and save mine for later? What time do I want to use these in terms of like initiative order? And I get that it's like, I guess for lack of a better term, a necessary evil. Evil is too strong of a word, but the term makes sense here, because without the loot tiles, you would have no decision space for the character cards. Like, that's what makes you try to decide when to play those character cards or not, is looking at the loot tiles and thinking, oh man, there's 4 bad ones out there. Like, I really have to go early so I don't get one of the bad ones. But I just find that like the reveal of the characters, putting them in order, is where all the kind of like reactions of everyone's like, oh, as if they also played like the Wind Nymph, or oh, they played the, whatever, the Buccaneer. And then when we're picking loot tiles, it feels like the game goes quiet a little bit, and people are just, it feels like solving these little math problems of like, okay, well, if I take this one, it's 3 points. If I take this one, it's only 2 now, but then if I get another one of these tiles later, it could be 5. And then sometimes you math these things out. Like, you don't want to just be like, oh, I'll take that one just without thinking of it. But like, we've seen the games I have found have not often been close in scores. So sometimes if you lose by like 20 points, then you think back and you're like, oh, I was sitting there mathing out the difference between like 2 points and 5 points, and I lost by 20 anyways, then it just feels like that part of the game is less impactful on the end result. And so I enjoy my plays of Libertalia, but it's always the selection of the loot tiles that makes me feel like, oh, can we get back to the part where we pick the character cards?
Yeah. So I agree for sure that like the characters are infinitely more interesting of a gameplay aspect than the loot tiles, for sure. But I think what you use as an example is actually something that I really like about the loot tiles is when you do have something where there's like 3 or 4 negative tiles out there, or like or if not negative, just not great tiles, and you have to weigh that into like, oh, I could play this character card and it could accomplish this, but then I'm giving up this, and I might have to take one of those bad loot tiles, or like, what is my opponent to play? Am I going to be in the bottom 4? Do I want to like increase the number I'm playing because of that? Well, but then it's not as good. Like, I like those decisions, and I like that the chaos it sort of brings to the secret cards you're playing and stuff. So I really enjoy that. I feel like, if anything, it almost needs to be like an approach to Libertalia, in my opinion, where you de-incentivize how much weight, gravity you put on the loot tiles. Where, like, I feel like the loot tiles for me, I don't really get hung up too often on what I'm picking or even math it out. It's more just, if there's negative ones there, I'm not taking those unless I absolutely have to. And if it's a choice between positive ones, am I going for like the map tokens to try to accomplish a certain amount that I have to gather, or do I want to take this, or is it just obvious to just take the treasure token? Like, they will be obvious a lot of the time, I feel like, but I feel like that part of the game is supposed to just be like, it's the cleanup. It's like everything was decided when you put that card down and you reveal, and really you're just kind of going through the motions intentionally. You're supposed to go through those motions at that point, and everything's supposed to be focused on the character placement. And then also when you take those characters back to your ship, and like what might trigger because of that in the end phases. So I feel like maybe that's just like, and maybe that's disappointing. Maybe it's like you from your perspective, like, maybe I should even ask, like, do you want like the token portion of the game to feel more interesting? And that's sort of like, you want there to be more meat in that portion. You don't want it to be sort of like, okay, so now we just go through the motions of picking our tiles.
Yeah, I think the main thing, I didn't think of it through this lens before until you started talking about it, but I'm realizing now it's very similar to the discussion we had about some of the cards in Fliptoons, where I just wish the tiles weren't always about like the number of coins or points that you get. Like, it always feels like it's like a numerical value rather than like, maybe if they had more interesting abilities, like maybe if one of the loot tiles was like, pick up one of your character cards that you already played, or like something that you hold this tile and like you get to make a decision with it at the end of the game, like something that is like a little less clear, like blur the lines a little bit of what the loot tiles do, rather than just being like, this one is a flat 5 points, this one will lose you 2 points, this one is this if you get 2 of them, but if you get 3 of them, like, it just feels like they're little math calculations to make, which that's where I kind of lose interest a little bit.
I could totally be down with, and it's too bad because there's 2 sides of the board, and so there's different abilities for all the tiles, and it's not that I think the options they give you are poor, but it would have been neat because they also give you these like actual tiles you can put onto the board, so you can mix and match the backside with the front side and whatnot. But if those ones they let you put down were like much bigger changes and much different abilities, where you could sort of say, we're going to incorporate 3 of these, or we're going to incorporate 1 of these just to shake it up. To me, that would give you that option. And then if you didn't like, you could scale it back, you could add more in, whatever. Like, I would be totally down with exploring a Libertalia version that has more complicated or in-depth loot token abilities and what they mean. Whether or not it becomes a better way to play the game, I don't know, but it would be interesting to explore. So I can get behind that part, but like, I definitely enjoy that aspect more than you, or not enjoy, but I guess it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you, because I sort of just look at that as like, I go through the motions, but that's not why I'm here to play Libertalia in the first place.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. My next game, you did not guess this one, but I don't think it'll surprise you, and that is Challengers. And so Challengers is a auto battler that is done through a war-like style deck, like if you played the card game War, where you're flipping cards that you've built over the course of 8 rounds, and you're adding new cards into your deck as you go. If you played auto battler, other card games or video games, you'll find a lot of similarities here. And I'm saying that the worst part of Challengers is the war-like flipping of cards. And the way I'm going to explain this is I think that a lot of the decisions that you make in Challengers are super interesting. And it's the same, I feel about them the same way I feel about Hearthstone Battlegrounds, which is the auto battle that I've put like hundreds of hours into. I don't play it anymore, but I did for a long time. And I love the fact that it does a similar thing that Challengers does, where they have like in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, there's all these different factions or races, and you never know which of the 8 are going to be in that game. And I think it's like 5 or 6 end up in each game. Whereas in Challengers, you're always going to have one of the colors not in there, and so you could have different combinations and different strategies that are forming depending on how they work together and individually. But I don't like that the way you can plan everything, or the way that you can form a strategy, can have just essentially I shuffle my deck, and before I even flip the first card, the way I've shuffled my deck can somehow just be the worst possible way I could have shuffled it, and I might just have a really bad game because of it. I get that the randomness, it's not even less that the randomness upsets me, it's just that in a game like that, I'll compare it one last time to Battlegrounds, is like in Battlegrounds, you are making a lane of what you've built your deck with, and so it's you order that how you want, and how your opponent orders it can cause you to like, oh, I should have ordered that differently, but it's not like I'm not randomly ordering that. I'm choosing an order based on last time I played that opponent, going, okay, so like my opponent did this last time, they had this one first, so if they're gonna have that one first, I should put this one here to counter that. And like, you could be wrong still, but there's at least some like initiative and onus on me to try to like remember what my opponent had, wonder, okay, what did they ditch, what did they get rid of, how, and I can do that in challengers, but at the end of the day, I can do that, and if the deck shuffles poorly, it doesn't matter. It just sort of, I just got unlucky. And so I almost wish that challengers was like limited you in some way. So, well, maybe not even limited you, but like basically said, whatever size your deck is, like after you build it, you just put it into the order that you want. And then obviously, I'm not saying the game's currently balanced for that, because some cards would then be too powerful. But if it had been thought from the beginning, I'm saying, and things were scaled around that, the idea of me being able to do that, I play you in a game, and oh shoot, I didn't realize Carlo was going to have this. Now next time I play you, and maybe it always is that you play everyone twice or something, I can go, okay, how is he adjusting for me? How am I adjusting for him? There's a bit of mind games on that. I just find that that's the part I actually dislike the most about challengers. I don't like that it's war style. I like everything else about it. I don't like randomly just flipping cards.
Okay, interesting. I didn't expect you to pick challengers for this. Honestly, I'm surprised. Okay. But it's a good pick, because I obviously do like it a lot more than you.
Yeah.
Even though you do like it. Okay, so one thing I'll start by saying is that one of the things I like most about challengers is the fact that you can't sort of net deck or do the same strategy all the time, because it's a pretty big deck of, I mean, each of the decks, the A, B, and C, have a lot of cards. And so I've taken screenshots on my phone for the video I'm going to do in the future, and like I've had so many different deck archetypes. Sometimes I start off trying to build a deck a certain way, and then those cards just don't come up, and I'm forced to pivot, okay? But in general, I think you can kind of build your deck based on how much you want to rely on the auto-battling aspect. And what I mean by that is there's cards that are kind of like low risk, low reward. There's cards that are like low risk, high reward, high risk, low reward, and high risk, high reward. You can think of it as almost like 4 quadrants. And the cards that have the highest numerical values are often those low risk, low reward, like safe cards. Because, a 5 is always going to be better than, a 3 or a 4 if that 3 or a 4, the ability that comes with it doesn't trigger. And when you have those kind of cards that don't have as many abilities on them, or stuff that resolves automatically, you are at the mercy a bit more of like, I'll shuffle up the deck and just see what happens. But if you're the type of person that wants more control over your deck, then you can pick the cards that have a little more, abilities, like the cards like Butler that allow you to like move cards off of your bench when they come in, or the Sailor, which I think is such an underrated card that lets you look through your whole deck and then choose one of those cards to put on the bottom, and so you have the knowledge of where things are. So I think the game gives you so many different tools, but a lot of these cards, like some of these cards I thought were bad until I'd played the game like 100 times and realized like, oh my god, if I get this with these, like this is where the value. And also because this card is in the A deck, it's really strong late game, but early on it's not very good, so the values of things change throughout the game. I also think of it sort of similar, like I get some weird, and I know it's supposed to be kind of giving you some sort of sports vibes in a way because of the way the artwork, the kind of tournament aspect, whatever, the fans watching, right, is like your points are considered fans. And so it reminds me a bit of soccer, where you're like a coach making a decision. You can set your strategy beforehand, but once the players get on the field and the ref blows the whistle, you have 45 uninterrupted minutes where all you can do is kind of shout at your players from the sidelines a bit and just trust that like what you told them in advance is going to kind of dictate a lot of the matchup. So I think the more that you see what other decks are in that particular matchup, whether it's the opponents you're playing against, or you look over and you see or hear, like in the game we played, I heard someone like, oh, what, they have 2 vendors, 3 vendors already? Like, oh man, I gotta look out for that deck. Like maybe then I'm going to get a card that's going to allow me to remove cards from my opponent's bench so that those vendors aren't boosting their other cards. So I just find the more reliable cards have a lower potential, whereas the risky cards have like a very low floor but a very high ceiling. And depending where you are in the tournament, if you get into the matchup number 5 or 6 and you don't have many points, your goal isn't necessarily to make the best deck now, because it doesn't matter if your deck is strong. If you didn't get enough fans, you're not going to make it into the final. So then you can kind of shift to getting cards that might give you fans to squeeze into that final, knowing that, yeah, your deck's going to be weaker, but it's the only shot I have at winning that final matchup. So I
agree with all of that. It's more just that, like, it would be more interesting to me if I was making all those archetype decisions and all those like risk decisions, but still ordering my deck. Again, I know that would change the game that's currently designed, but I just mean, like, if it had been like that from the start, then I'm still unsure how my opponent's going to order their deck, similar to like playing tag team and stuff. But I have a little bit more control over, I've built this archetype and I'm seeing it through in the way it's meant to, not it just happened to not come together the way I wanted to in this one game. That's where it becomes a little less interesting to me.
Okay, I know. I have to push back on this because we talked about game optimization, and this is you're now saying that you want to be able to optimize your deck more.
But every game that I would play of challengers, I can't really optimize the same way. Like, again, I'm going off of Battlegrounds and stuff, but like, it's like, depending what comes up to me, what I draw and everything, I have to like look at the cards, and it might be like, oh shoot, yeah, I can grab this that gets enhanced by having all yellow cards, but then I don't get any other yellow cards, so I have to pivot. Or I get this and it's like, well, this works in conjunction with this, it's not super strong unless I get more pieces later, so I'm going to go into that, and if I don't get those pieces, I have to abandon. There's still all these different ways and directions I can go, and it's like I'm trying to optimize, but it's really hard. Like, auto battlers are hard in general to optimize perfectly. When you do, it's such an accomplishment to be like, oh my god, it all worked out. I got the exact triples I wanted. I got this. But like, it's the goal of trying to optimize, but still being able to like put things in the way I want, and then see, oh, but my opponent countered me this way, or they saw through my plan here, or they saw that I was going to try to work around them here. Like, to me, that's I want to optimize, but knowing I can't do like perfect optimization just by the nature of the game and the randomness it'll still have. Like, I still want it to have randomness. I just think I don't want that randomness to be whether or not like the card I need to come out first happened to be on the bottom, and then the card I needed to grab that card to move it to the top happened to be second bottom. Like, and it's just like, yeah, it's unlucky and it happened to go that way.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It feels terrible when things come in the wrong order, but I think that's where the true like variability and replay value comes from the game. Is like, you might only get that deck to come out the way you want it 1 out of every 100 or 200 plays, and that's kind of the magic of like, I might never have this work out perfectly ever again, and then playing again is almost like chasing that high.
Yeah, this is a game that I know you're gonna have lots more to say about, but I just feel like in general this is gonna be one that, especially as more auto battlers come out, I feel like this is gonna be a lot of interesting like versus type discussions and comparison discussions. So I don't have to always compare it to a video game, because it's not a completely fair comparison anyways. It's just that we don't have enough auto battlers to really compare it to the board game space yet. For
sure, and you've played a bunch of tag team where you can choose a bit more of your deck, and I only played it once on BGA and it didn't really work for me on BGA. You've actually played it in person, so maybe my perspective will change slightly once I've played tag team. Yeah, for sure. Man, you've picked some heavy hitters, Dylan. I was not expecting you. Came at me pretty hard here. No, I like it. All right, so on to my last one here, and this one you did not guess, so you were 1 for 3 on Libertalia. And honestly, this was like, I settled on this one like an hour before we started recording. I was not going to come after this at first. I'm coming after your number 1 game, Keyflower.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm coming after this one is specifically because of I don't remember even which video. Oh, is the excellent 4 and 5 player games at the 5 complexity levels video where we talked about how amazing that session was that we had earlier. Last year or whatever, and you speculated, could this ever be his number 1 game of all time? Like, how much is it going to climb for him? And I kept thinking about it, and I think this is where the game is like, I'll say right now, this is probably I don't do decimal ratings for games. This is probably the best 9 out of 10 game I've played. It's either my number 1 or number 2 9 out of 10 game, okay? If I had to give it decimals, it would definitely be over a 9. But it's not a 10, and I think the main reason is that as much as I want to keep exploring different strategies every time I play, I just find that because the auctioning and the bidding and the fighting for tiles and setting the value, like the color of the tiles and all that kind of stuff, is the most fun part, and you need meeples to do that, I find that I'm often feel more inclined to go for a strategy that involves having a lot of meeples. And so even though last game I won with going for the tools,
Yeah.
it meant that I really like gave up on getting a lot of meeples. It was probably the fewest meeples I ever had playing a game of Keyflower, and a lot of the rounds I was like passing while everyone was going, and I was kind of waiting, or I'd pass on my second or third action, fourth action, because in this game once you pass, if it comes around, you can jump back in later, and I knew I wouldn't be out because you guys had tons of meeples left. So I just felt like I wasn't as involved in the game. Like even though I won and like I saw the strategy through to the end, I had those the winter tiles at the start that were going to score the tools, and I just went, I'm going to ignore more meeples, even though that's like always what I want to do, is have lots of meeples to get into these fierce battles and push people around and have lots of turns, lots of actions. It just felt like I had less fun and I had fewer decisions to make in the game going for the tools strategy. And even when I've tried like the ones where you kind of like are gathering resources to move them onto a board is the same. And I just feel like I'm always going to feel inclined to go for the strategies that give me more and more meeples to just have more involvement in those auctions. And I think that's what prevents it from being a game that I'm going to want to play like 50 times a year, 100 times a year, the way I obsess over some other games.
I wonder, do you think there's any world where if you played it like 50 times in a year, that then you uncover, oh, you know what? Yes, obviously meeples are important to this game, but there's way more flexibility in terms of how much I go into them and feel like I'm doing well? Or is it the fact that you think that not going for meeples has so far made the game less fun for you?
Yeah, it's specifically the fun aspect. Because again, I got like, I don't even remember. I think I got 50 points from tools, which was just from the tools alone. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying like just to show how valid this strategy can be without prioritizing. I think I had the fewest meeples of anyone in the game, but because I landed those tools so well, I think I got like 50 some points or whatever just from the tools, but it just felt like I saw you guys getting involved. I had those couple big moments where people outbid me or I was able to sneak in and get something, but I acquired so few tiles. I had the smallest village by far of anyone, and I just felt like I was watching you guys have all of these kind of auction battles, and I got involved a lot less than I would have liked. So it was just, even though I won, I found it less fun playing that style of game, and so I'm always going to want to have more meeples to get more involved in the auctions, even if it means I lose.
I wonder because like I agree that that's the most fun part of the game. So anything that limits you from being able to participate in it can be seen as like this is limiting my ability to enjoy the game to its fullest. I wonder, and I only wonder this because I haven't played it enough to know the answer, is it viable to essentially see someone like say a board that people are going after the meeples right away, the ones that give you more meeples, especially with colors you don't have a lot of. But there are other tiles that are available, like transportation tiles. If you just went and said, I'm going to claim every single transportation tile, even if I don't need them all, but then that makes it that if anyone wants to do transportation, they have to come to my home village. And now that's how you get meeples, is everyone flooding your board with meeples. And you say, well, you guys took the meeple tiles, but now I get your meeples because you have to come to me to transport stuff. To me, I don't know the answer to that, but if that works, that almost makes the game more fun to me, because then you have to like look at it as like, oh shoot, but now if we don't contest, if we don't like diversify and I only go for these meeples, Carlo's going to come in here and make us have to pay him meeples essentially, right? Like, I don't know if the game has that much depth, but if it did, to me, that almost makes the game even better, but I just don't know the answer.
Right, and it's funny you say that because I tried early on, I thought that same thing, as I actually tried outbidding someone for one of those, and then I just got outbid, and I was like, I can't afford to win this transportation tile, so I had to pivot. And the last thing I'll say is, I've only played the in-person version, I say only, maybe 7-8 times, and on Board Game Arena maybe similar, so I've only played the game maybe 15 times, so I'm by no means an expert, and I'm by no means claiming that I know all the strategies, so this might change with more plays, but right now that's what prevents it from being a 10 out of 10 for me, or ever being considered like a top 5 game again, or my number 1 or anything like that. It's the one sticking point for me right now with Keyflower.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There is definitely a skew towards like the importance of meeple from what I've seen from our plays. But the answer to this is we just need to play more Keyflower. It's the only way to know for sure.
Absolutely. I would never say no to more Keyflower, truly.
Okay, so for my last one for you did get this guess right. So we're both 1 for 3, and this is Race for the Galaxy. And so I'm saying that the presentation of Race for the Galaxy is the worst part of Race for the Galaxy. So I can say from experience that it makes the game harder to learn, but more than that, harder to be immersed in the way that they've not only laid out some of the iconography and like the graphic design of some of it. Not that the graphic design is bad, but just the way it's implemented, and even just like the theme and like what they explain how they explain what you're doing in the rule book and what the game is about and stuff like that. The full presentation, I feel like it doesn't diminish how like deep the game is with its cards and how much variety you can have from game to game. But I just feel like that is doing it a disservice and holding it back. So I would say that the more that I have to ask what something means or does, the more likely I am to not take that card or utilize it, especially in my first few plays. Like if I don't fully understand something, there'll be times where I'll ask for clarification, but especially in a game where you're keeping your hands secret from each other, you're not always inclined to want to give that information away, or to then like it can be hard to clarify exactly what you want, or you have to come up with other examples to get around that. And so I will often just not go for stuff. And I find that there's even when you go and look in the back of the rule book at like all the different card powers, there's so much iconography explanation but the question I immediately ask is, was there no better way to do this? And like, if someone wants to explain to me how there was no more concise and better way to lay out the icons and to make this more obvious, and they can prove it to me, then I will relinquish it. But I have seen enough games do iconography well, maybe not with as many powers and nuances, but it would take a lot to convince me that there is no possibility that the presentation iconography could be better. And if it could be better, I would just say this is a game that would be ripe to like, don't change anything else with the gameplay unless there's stuff that needs to be balanced or people agree needs to be changed, but just present it better. Because I feel like between like things like the cost and the victory points just being different shapes overlapping over each other, then Windfall having a halo, production having the solid color, then it's Military Worlds having red around that. Like, so many of them are so similar that I just feel like I don't know what the answer is. That's not my forte. That's not my expertise. But there's not sometimes enough differentiation. And then when you add that into all the different card abilities and what everything means, it just gets confusing or convoluted and holds back from being immersed in, I'm doing this like activity in this space game. And I just feel like that in my opinion, it just needs someone to give that part a fresh coat of paint and not completely disrupt it, but just really ask the tough questions of what could this be like. Poll like 10 people for every single one, get a bunch of like gamer and designer feedback. What would make this iconography better? And just find a way to better present it. And you might sell me on it, because that's the holdup for me every time is I'm not a big fan of how it immerses me and how much I feel confused by some of the iconography.
Okay, so before I defend the greatest card game of all time, can you just clarify?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure no part of, like,
Yeah.
I know you don't like the art style, but what you're saying is specifically the iconography and everything, like learning, right? You're not coming at the art right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the presentation of the like design, graphics, and icon around the art itself, because art is subjective, and like I didn't want to get into like an ethnos type discussion about that either. So
okay, so there's only two things that come to mind real quick. The first is that having icons rather than having text, I think, is a really, really good choice that makes it, unfortunately, significantly less beginner friendly, but is what makes the game able to be played in like 10 or 15 minutes by experienced players. Because It's like a language where you recognize you look at an icon, and right now it could convey, 5 or 10 words or 15 words worth of text just by looking at it, because now you look at this card with a hand around it, knowing that like you draw a card when this thing comes up, or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to get into specific card icons, but so yeah. I know the trade-off between text and icons itself is a hard one for some people to get over, and that's what made, of all of my favorite games, it's the one that took me the longest to love, because it felt very obtuse at first for me to learn the game. It's not Fresh Fish levels, and you have to also remember that I first learned this game back in like 2009 or 2010, so like I learned it so long ago that the learning process for me is so far removed that I forget what it's like to learn Race for the Galaxy, other than remembering like, man, this game is hard to wrap your head around. But it is one of my favorite games. It's one of the very hardest to teach. I tried teaching this to Jeff a few weeks ago, and like I did such a bad job. I was like, man, it's been years since I've taught this game. I can see that he's confused. Even some of the icons, when he plays cards, I'm like, oh, you can do this. And he's like, wait, what? You can do this? So, like, yeah, I struggle. This is a hard one to defend from that standpoint because, like, really all I can say is it's worth it once you learn the game, and that once you know it, there are very few rules questions to go back to. It probably does take, because there are so many unique cards in the deck, it will take you probably a good 5 or 10 plays before you feel comfortable and don't have to check the rules anymore. Like 5 or 10 plays fairly close together. And whenever there's an icon that isn't an obvious one, usually there's a little text box in the corner of the card. It has the picture of the icon, and then it'll expand, like, when this happens, you do this. So I don't know if there's really, like, that's an interesting challenge. I do wonder if, because it's never been re-implemented, reworked, there's never been a new edition, and I'd be curious to see how much they could clean it up. And I will admit there are a couple of them that sometimes, every once in a while, even someone who's played the game, 2,000 plus times, including digital versions, every once in a while there's the odd one where I go, what is the exact thing going on here again? Oh, okay. I think the aspect of, like, the circles versus the diamonds in terms of, like, worlds versus developments, or what's, the halo for the windfall, like, I think that is not really much of a problem once you get past, like, a couple plays. But there are certain icons that will still trip up new players, and yeah, it's a real shame. Like, I get that, and I guess
that's what I'm saying is, like, even, like, if we can all, not all, but if a lot of us, if we can agree, especially from experienced players and new players, and try and teach it and all this kind of stuff, that there's a gap here. It's kind of surprising to me that, and you know what, this comes down to, like, if someone paints a painting and then I say, oh, this could have been better here, and they go, well, this is my art, I can have it be whatever I want. It's like, you're right, you're 100% right, and just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong. So it's not wrong, but if it's the thing that a lot of people are saying is holding it back, to ask the question, could this be improved? I think to say no would just be like, that's not the right answer. Like, anything can be improved. And in this case, if it makes the game more accessible, if it makes the game more interesting and more thematic to interact with or whatever, like, why not try? Like, why not challenge someone to say, we don't need to redesign anything. Let's not even rebalance these cards. Let's just try to make the one thing that's the holdup on the game not a holdup, and see, at least give it a shot. Maybe they have and it didn't work. I don't know. It's just that I noticed that's the thing that always makes me not eager to come back to it. And when I ask myself, if I wanted to come back to what would it take, this is pretty much the thing. And so I don't know. I'm just more surprised that they've never. We just talked about, like, Feast for Road and all this stuff. Get, like, with the Danes. I'm surprised the Race for the Galaxy, with all of its expansions and everything, they've never said, let's just try to tackle the iconography and the presentation to make it more accessible.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because they still have such a big player base and that the people who love it don't see it as an issue, so maybe that's why they're like, if we do this, how many new people is it going to bring in? Like, or do we change the theme? Do we just update the artwork and keep the name and make it sci-fi still? Do we do a completely different
keep the theme, keep the name, keep the cards? Like, just no, you can keep the artwork, honestly, if you wanted to. I'm just like, can you do the design of the iconography and everything around it in a different way? And then if it needs new art because of it, cross that bridge, but at least attempt that part of it. I just feel like even Magic the Gathering, they came in 1993, shifted their entire card design and knew that they'd get flack for it, but there was reasons they had to do it. It's like, at some point, like, I would just love to see them give it a shot.
You know what? And for the sake of me hoping that someone like you would give it a chance in the way that you've given chance to other games, I won't say them here, maybe because there's, depending when this episode drops, they might be mentioned in an upcoming video or not. But yeah, I mean, it came out in 2007, so, like, maybe next year we'll see a 20th anniversary edition, or maybe in 2032 we'll see a 25-year anniversary edition or whatever.
Yeah.
Until then, I just don't know if they would have a specific reason to update it just based on iconography. But yeah. I would love to see it just to make other people give it a chance again, because Tom Lehman, when he designed it, I think he even said, like, this is a game that I fully intended to be played minimum 50 to 100 times, just the base game alone, before you even go seeking expansions. So I think if you're even considering giving it a chance, you almost have to go in with that mindset of, like, I have to accept that the first few games are really going to be a hurdle. And I know it's a lot to ask, right? It's like we talked about before, saying, like, oh, watch this TV show, but the first 2 seasons aren't that great. It's like, well, I don't know if I want to invest that to see if I like it or not. So
yeah, that's a great comparison.
It's a big ask.
And with that, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling full. That was not only a very great main course, but also a very filling appetizer, which is awesome. We still came in on great time here, which is great. And so before we fully leave you guys, I just want to say if you'd like to chat with us and all the rest of us in our community, we have a really great Discord that has a lot of great people in it, very wholesome conversations about board games and about everything else as well. And we also play a lot of board game arena games together. And so you can get into a bunch of games there. You can request your own games. People usually are quick to join them. So it's a great way to just get more games played as well. Again, as we mentioned at the start, we are a YouTube channel. We have a community there in the comments as well. So we'd love to hear from you there. I didn't mention at the top of the episode, but we do have bonus episodes for these podcast episodes now. So we do expansions on a topic where we talk for another additional like 15 to 30 minutes to expand on certain things. I can tell you right now, there's going to be probably a lot to expand on with this episode that we'll want to say. So if you are interested in those bonus episodes, that's one of the perks you get from being a patron. And we very much appreciate your support. It allows us to continue to keep doing this and be able to, be financially sustainable, considering a lot of our values, prevent us from getting revenue in other ways because we don't want to just take a bunch of publisher money and whatnot. Jump in, Carl. What do you got?
I was just going to say that just to clarify, the expansion episodes that we release will be a recap of the previous episode from a couple weeks back. And one last thing is that I've gotten back to the Patreon monthly newsletters. So it's been the first one in a bit over a year, but the January 2026 newsletter is up. So you can, even if you're a non-patron, you can sign up for free and just get a quick preview if you're kind of curious as to what sort of stuff those newsletters touch on.
For sure. Yeah, the newsletter was great. So yeah, and that's a great additional perk you get from being a patron, is being able to read all those wonderful newsletters that Carla puts together. And if you'd like to support the show, like I said, please consider leaving a review on our podcast platforms as well, specifically Apple Podcasts. I'm not saying you have to listen to it on there, but if you want to go over there to leave us a review, those go a really long way to helping get visibility and notoriety for our brand new fledgling podcast here. And I already mentioned Patreon, but again, if you are wanting to actually go check out our Patreon for yourself, it's patreon.com/allyoucanboard. And plus, one of our newest rewards available on all Patreon tiers is going to be that you can potentially get free games as well. We haven't done our first giveaway yet, so you'll be getting in before that happens. But to the two highest tiers, you have an opportunity to either get priority access to them or just potential to get access to them in general. And we're going to have a bunch of games to give away the first time we do one, which will probably in the next couple months. And so there's a good chance that you'd have a lot of your patron contribution just subsidized by the fact that you're getting potentially, who knows, we're going to be having some games we give away that are probably going to be like $100 games that we've gotten from publishers and whatnot that we're just not keeping for ourselves. So it's just a great option to be able to have your contribution feel like you got more from us than we got from you, which is not the case, but it could feel that way. So anything else you want to add, Carl, before we close it off here?
No, like you said, I am quite full.
All right. Otherwise, this has been episode 2 of the All You Can Board podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again in 2 weeks for episode 3.